But if I'm relentlessly positive about it, I say, I have a problem I don't know how to solve yet.
You are listening to Amplify Your Success podcast, episode 403. And today we're going to discover how to be relentlessly positive as a leader. You ready for this? Let's get started. Welcome to the Amplify Your Success podcast. Get ready to ramp up your revenue, amplify your impact, and make your mark in the world. This is the show for experts, thought leaders, and service professionals who want to shatter their limits and achieve that next level. You're going to find out from other experts and influencers how they made it. Now, let's get amplified. Hey there, inspired entrepreneurs and business leaders. It's your host, Melanie Benson, and today I'm very excited to bring you a graduate of my 100K Authority Accelerator program. I have such a crazy story about this amazing guest that is joining us today, as well as my graduate. And we have known each other since high school, I kid you not. Very funny story. And I love how it all unfolded. And I love that I got to be a part of extracting this very powerful topic and helping Pamela really shape this concept that she's working with here, because the work she's doing with leaders is extraordinary. And I love that she's bringing this relentless positivity into our leaders, not in a Pollyanna kind of way, but in a very powerful and constructive way to not just lead others, but to transform the experience of being led. It's just so brilliant. When I got to work with her around her topic and help shape her offer and all the things we do in 100K through Accelerator, I felt very honored, because when you get to be part of making ripples happen, helping leaders be able to be better leaders with their communication and their messaging, we're making a big difference on this planet. So 100K Authority Accelerator is taking applications right now for our fall program. So if you know that it's time for you to make a greater impact, you want to monetize your exposure on podcasts and stages more effectively, and you know maybe that message that you've been trying out isn't quite landing the way you'd hope, and you want an expert to help you be a lighthouse so that others can see you and hire you, then let's talk. I'll drop the link to the 100K Authority Accelerator program, and all it takes is you applying, and we'll have a quick conversation to see if it's the best next step for you. Okay, let's get into this very powerful conversation with my guest today. Welcome back, Amplifiers. Today, we're going to explore something that, whether you're a coach, you're a leader, you have an online business, wherever you are, even if you're a parent or in a relationship, you need to know the differences between toxic positivity and being relentlessly positive. This is going to have a huge impact on how you lead and how you help the people around you go to the next level. Let me introduce this really extraordinary guest. And I have a fun story about how we know each other. Since 1997, Pamela Jett has transformed tens of thousands of leaders around the globe into relentlessly positive communicators. She's had a lifelong romance with words and their effect on human relationships. Now, after pursuing her PhD in communication, spending time in prison, only as a movie extra, and working as a university professor, Pamela decided to combine her love of words and her fascination with how they impact relationships and help new and untrained leaders to become more effective, promotable, and confident in her 8-week leadership fast track program. Now, Pamela and I have a really fun story. So first of all, welcome Pamela to the show. I've been very excited to have this episode come to life.
Thank you so much. I'm excited.
Me too. So here's the fun backstory. Pamela and I recently reconnected. We've been Facebook friends for a few years, and we recently reconnected when she became a member of 100K Authority Accelerator, which she was just such a rock star. I was like, wow, like her work is so powerful in the world. I couldn't wait to spotlight her on the show. But this is not the first time we met. So matter of fact, we went to high school together. And so yay to the power of Facebook, right? But I just love our story. I love how our lives have re-intertwined. And I'm so excited to share you with the Amplify community today.
Thank you. I really am looking forward to it, and definitely different than high school, that's for sure.
Yes. Yeah. I'm a completely different person than high school, as we were just talking about in the green room, but that's not going on the air. Uh, so let's start with this. Our theme today is toxic positivity versus relentlessly positive, which, as you know, when we were in the group, I just love to get that all twisted up. But this starting point of toxic positivity, I think, is so important. As I say, no matter how you're leading, because really all those types of relationships I mentioned earlier, they're all places in our lives where we lead. We're leading and influencing others, right? Let's get on the table. What is toxic positivity?
Well, toxic positivity is a concept that I discovered while I was teaching and training and working as a keynote speaker. I'd been doing that for about 20 years, teaching people how important it is to choose to be happy. And somehow it was not resonating. It wasn't resonating with my audience, and it also wasn't resonating with me. And I realized that I had inadvertently been denying one of the key concepts of relentless positivity by teaching Choose to Be Happy, which is that negative things do happen, challenging circumstances do occur. But toxic positivity is when we decide to have that rah cheerleader, everything's going to be fine, everything's going to be great, hype mode attitude, and ignore the very real challenges and the very real obstacles that we face. And it turns into this very fake, phony, saccharine kind of leadership, or this attitude that people think, well, don't you understand? I mean, these are real challenges, or I've just suffered significant loss, or my business is not doing well. And you're saying the secret is I'm supposed to be woo happy. And that is not the answer, but that is what toxic positivity is, when people do not acknowledge the very real world challenges or obstacles, and they wind up trying to make it all better by being perky and happy clappy and rah cheerleader and ignoring those real problems. And it's toxic. It does a lot of damage to our reputations, to people's minds, to their hearts. It's toxic.
Can we just go a little deeper into that for a second? Because, first of all, I love that you're talking about this. And I grew up in an environment where there was a lot of toxic positivity, and I didn't know what damage it was doing until much later in life, when I was unpacking a whole bunch of trauma and realizing, okay, this got like spiritually whitewashed for a really long time, and it didn't get addressed. Like, there wasn't space to have real feelings and emotions. And I'm just kind of curious, like you're starting to give some examples there, but I'm wondering if you maybe have a personal experience or something that you've witnessed, and like, what is this, how is this negatively impacting the people that we're leading?
A really, really good question, Melanie, because I had a similar upbringing where, just be happy, make it, be nice, don't let anybody see the negative, just be cheerful. And in many ways, it was part of how I was socialized to be this positive, nice, upbeat, perky person. And it did yield some benefits, of course. It was much better to have that attitude than to be walking around with this sad, mopey, doomsday mindset. But as you mentioned, there was no space for real challenges, real feelings, to even to be able to say I'm sad or angry or frustrated. That was somehow a weakness. And I had been perpetuating that professionally. I really wasn't allowing my customers to have the opportunity to push back and say, but Pamela, some challenges are hard. And a little over 10 years ago, I decided to do something kind of crazy in many people's minds, but for me, it was normal behavior. I decided that I was going to go solo hiking in the Swiss Alps. Now, the funny thing is I am not a huge hiker. I live in the state of Arizona. There's no amount of training in the state of Arizona that's going to prepare you to hike at altitude in Switzerland. I'm not a big hiker, but I decided, okay, I feel called to do this. My soul was screaming at me to go solo hiking. So I Googled hiking with children, and I found that, okay, if kids could do these hiking trails, I could do them. So I'm in Switzerland. I'm doing a bunch of day hiking. I'm not doing hut to hut hiking. I'm just doing day hiking. And one day I'm on a trail that started out gloriously. I mean, imagine something out of The Sound of Music, green grass and blue sky and white puffy clouds and, cool breeze, and everything was just perfect. And I am happy because my expectations and my experience was matching up, because that's how we define happiness. When what we expect and what we get are aligned, we say, oh, I'm happy with that. So I was so stinking happy. I was having a great time. I'm hiking and everything was wonderful until it wasn't. Until the incline changed, until it started to rain, and I am not prepared for this, and I am, trudging and trudging, and my quads are on fire, and my lungs are about to burst, and my head is full of, oh my gosh, my mother was right. She told me I shouldn't do this, and I'm not a hiker, and this is stupid, and the negative self-talk was just running rampant. And I remember the exact moment when this happened. I was standing on a flat piece of the trail, and I've got all this negativity rolling around in my head. And I thought to myself, Pamela Marie, you are a professional speaker. You are an expert in this. You should get a grip on this. I started shouldn't on myself, which, by the way, is not healthy. And then I took a beat and I decided, okay, what do hikers do? They hike. What are you doing? You're hiking. So that means you're a hiker. So go hike to that tree. Because I was tempted to turn around and go back to the gondola stop that I had gotten off of and go back to the chalet and eat chocolate and have, a relaxing time. But I did not want to quit because I thought, I'm not a quitter. I'm a hiker now. And as I am making this journey, tree by tree, rock by rock, bend in the road, I started realizing that only by admitting that I was frustrated, only by admitting that I was struggling, was I able to access the tools to overcome the struggle, the frustration, the pain. Only by allowing myself to say, wow, this isn't what I'm expecting. I'm not happy right now. It was only by giving myself freedom to acknowledge that things were rough and it was hard, was I able to go into the toolkit that I possessed. Because if I didn't allow myself to admit it was hard, I would think, well, I should just be able to do this and I should be able to get this and what is going on? And those weren't helping me. Those tools were not available. And I realized I've been doing that to my customers, my clients, the people I coach, my friends and family members, because I didn't allow them to access their full range of tools because I was perpetuating that problem of toxic positivity, not only in my own life, but professionally. I wasn't allowing people to acknowledge that some things are hard, and it's what we resist persists. So the more we resist feeling icky, the harder that feeling of fear or discouragement or ickiness or frustration or anger or whatever negative emotion we're feeling, the harder it fights to be recognized within us internally. And the
Gosh,
harder it becomes to overcome.
I'm
But if
just
you can
getting
name it, you can
chills.
tame it. You
Yes.
can
Oh
name it.
my
It's like,
gosh.
I am frustrated. Now I'm going to access my tools to overcome frustration. So
Yeah.
there I was discouraged. Okay, what are my tools to overcome discouragement? I was tired and scared. What tools do I have to overcome being tired and scared? And that's what allowed me to I called it micro hiking. Sometimes I could only go a couple of minutes without having to stop and completely recenter physically because the altitude and the incline was so difficult. But I just micro hiked. But I could not have done that if I hadn't acknowledged I was struggling to begin with.
There are so many gems in that story and what you shared, and this revelation that there's a difference between being relentlessly positive, which I know we're going to unpack in a minute, and being in toxic positivity. And I'm just thinking of how this relates, even if you're not leading a team right now, but you're leading yourself through your business. And I mean,
Absolutely.
there's just so much negative self-talk that we often enter into when there's a gap between where we are and where we want to be, that we're not happy with our results. Like all the things you're talking about can be applied to us as entrepreneurs or parents or whatever we are, right? And
Absolutely.
and so I'm really curious, like, what's the difference in your mind between being in that toxic positivity where the term whitewashing it, like trying to make it all better. It's just like, let's just be grateful for what we have, and
Mhm.
choosing to be in that acknowledgement of the problem and accessing relentlessly positive energy? What is that difference?
Well, a lot of it has to do, first of all, with your mindset, with thinking it's not okay to be experiencing those negative emotions and wanting to whitewash it. That's that instinct to say, "Oh no, I'm fine. Everything's fine. It's good. It's good." Is so deeply ingrained in us that we've got to recognize when we're in resistance to our own emotional state. And then once we acknowledge, "Oh, I am trying to make something better using an ineffective tool," because that's what toxic positivity is. And all it does is create more disease or dis-ease in our bodies. If we're just talking about ourselves, more guilt, more frustration, it does nothing to help us either physically, spiritually, emotionally, or mentally. But if I can say, I'm frustrated, okay, now I know what my issue is, or I'm overwhelmed, or I'm discouraged, or I'm scared that my business isn't going to grow the way I want it to grow to meet my financial goals and to feed my family and keep a roof over my head. And then we spiral into that negative place. Or I don't know the answers. I don't know how to fix this. Well, once we can start tapping into that, we can then access relentlessly positive tools, which is what I teach. And one of my very favorites is the word yet. So imagine as you are a business owner, an entrepreneur, and you get to a place where you're stuck and you don't know the solution. So the toxic positive approach would be, "Oh, it's not a problem. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. It's nothing. I don't need to worry about not understanding that. I don't need to, that's not a big deal. I'm fine. Everything's fine," which of course only makes the problem get bigger. But if I'm relentlessly positive about it, I say, "I have a problem I don't know how to solve yet." I put the word yet on that statement, and now I'm in solution mode. Now that's a relentlessly positive tool, to simply use the word yet whenever we think, "I'm not any good at this." Okay, you're not any good at it yet. So I can acknowledge I'm not any good at this yet. But by putting yet, it opens up the possibility. One of the central tenets of being relentlessly positive is being future focused. So I'm allowing future me the possibility that future me could be good at this, but acknowledging that I currently have a challenge, which then means I can go seek appropriate resources, educations, experts. I mean, in many ways, it was one of the things that drew me to your program, was that I knew I had a skill gap, and I didn't want to stick my head in the sand and ignore it and say, "Oh no, everything's fine. My business is fine," because my business was fine. But I wasn't looking for fine. I wanted better, extraordinary, and I knew I needed to close the gap. But if I just said, "Ugh, I'm no good at this, I'm no good at this," I would never take an action. So I started thinking, "Oh, I'm not good at this yet. I'm not good at this yet," which allowed me the opportunity to learn. So that's how relentless positivity works. It's
Mm.
by making small changes to how we think and how we speak and how we behave, while still acknowledging that we have challenges and struggles.
I love that. Well, first of all, it's humanizing that sometimes we're not there yet, right? I think
Exactly.
sometimes, especially in the world of entrepreneurism, successful entrepreneurism, and I think this happens in every industry, people love to paint this picture that everything's perfect,
Mhm.
and it's not.
No.
I guess maybe that's another way we do toxic positivity,
Yeah,
right?
we
Saying,
paint we
let's,
we try to put the lipstick on the pig, so to speak, and only show the pretty part, and, it's
yeah.
like it's not always pretty. It's not a business owning a business, being an entrepreneur, it can get ugly, it can get scary, it can get emotionally challenging. I've been in an entrepreneurial position for 30 years, and there are moments where I have just been, terrified, but I can't overcome the terror unless I'm willing to at least admit it to myself that I'm scared. And when I get scared, I go into freeze. And when I freeze, I that doesn't work. But if I can acknowledge, okay, I'm scared. What tools do I have to manage fear or terror? And then I get to access all of my tools, which is the relentlessly positive approach. So
Mm.
it has to do with saying, I'm human, I'm real, and acknowledging that, because people can tell when you are not in alignment. So a leader who's saying to their team, everything's going to be fine, everything's going to be fine, but they just had to lay off 35 people, the team is thinking, you're not even acknowledging that we just went through a major shift in our team and it feels icky and it feels ugly. And I don't trust you because now you're acting like nothing's wrong, but maybe tomorrow you're going to lay off 35 more people. They would trust you more if you would say as a leader, hey, yesterday was really hard or Friday was really hard. And, this is going to be difficult. We've lost a third of our team. And I am confident that we have the resources and the tools and the wherewithal to thrive. And I'm here to support you in that. But if you don't acknowledge people's pain, they don't trust you.
So well said.
And if we don't acknowledge our own struggles, we don't trust ourselves. It's called self-abandonment.
Boom. That's it right there. That is the number one challenge. And I think where we do ourselves a disservice, whether we're a business owner, an entrepreneur, a spouse, a parent, a leader, all the roles we play, if we don't trust ourselves, it's like we operate out of that shadow energy. So
that's exactly what it is. It's the projection of, I want everybody to think everything's just perfect. Mm-hmm. And then we're not in alignment with ourselves. We abandon ourselves. Like you say, we're in that shadow energy, but we don't trust ourselves. And then everything becomes fear-based. We are doing everything out of fear instead of confidence. And a relentlessly positive person can feel the fear and do it anyway. They can feel the sadness and move forward anyway. They can feel the skill gap and move forward anyway. A friend of mine who owns a very, very large business, once he discovered this, he changed completely the way he managed his team because he started realizing that he was trying to amp everybody up. And they were struggling because they didn't have access to the tools that they needed. And so they're thinking, who is this guy? Why is he trying to tell us how to do our jobs more effectively by being this rah-rah cheerleader when we don't have enough hammers? And we're not being heard. And they didn't trust him. They thought, what an idiot. He doesn't know anything about our jobs, our day-to-day life. But the moment he started saying, okay, what are your biggest challenges and how can we fix them? People felt heard, respected, appreciated, and things got better. And they saved millions of dollars and were able to transform that business that had been historically a family-owned business and is still a family-owned business into a thriving family-owned business.
I love that story. I'm just thinking of all the ways that we can use this technique of yet, as you're sharing that tool with us, and really like deepen trust and rapport with people around us. We'll just take what's happening in the coaching world right now. There's a lot of people really scared because everything that worked one way isn't working that way. And people are terrified. People are closing businesses. People are scrimping by with cash flow they're not used to because things just kind of changed for a lot of us. And so I think this idea of like, I don't know how to solve this problem yet is a gateway into, all right, we're here, like it's happening. We don't have to pretend it's not. And we have tools in our toolbox to navigate a new way to do business or a new way to market or a new way to sell or whatever it is. And so I just love this so much. I was getting so curious as we were talking, Pamela, about what would you say, let's say somebody's listening in, they lead a team or they're leading their business and they're starting to wonder like, well, am I like more on the toxic positivity side or am I more relentlessly positive? Like, do you know there's some signs we could give our listeners today that maybe you're leading with more toxic positivity than is good for your role?
Well, there are a couple of things. First of all, it's important to recognize that every decision we ever make, so every decision you make, every decision your team makes, starts out as a feeling first. And this is based on some scientific research, neuroscientific research that we won't delve into, but trust me when I say every decision you make, every decision a team member makes, a family member makes, is based on a feeling first. And if you want your team to be engaged, to be collaborative, to have a lot of positive energy. And I'm not talking about the rah-rah cheerleader, just that they feel they're doing a good job. If you want them to decide to be committed to your organization's goals and objectives, you got to start by trying to figure out what are the feelings that drive those kinds of decisions. So if you have a lot of turnover on your team, if you have a lot of disengagement, if you have a lot of siloing, if you have a lot of conflict, those are signs that however you're leading, which might be kind of old school command and control, which tends to rely a lot on toxic positivity, like let's just say it's going to be better and hope that it will be. If you are experiencing those signs, then chances are it's because people aren't feeling trusted, valued, respected, appreciated, seen, heard. Because when people feel appreciated, trusted, valued, respected, seen, heard, then they make decisions to stay, to be committed, to be engaged. So if you're experiencing the opposite results of what you want, it's because people are feeling the feelings that drive those opposite results. And then what drives those feelings is how you are communicating to them. Or in the case of to yourself, how am I communicating to myself? Because words drive feelings and feelings drive decisions. So we go back to, okay, am I choosing my communication? Am I choosing my language? And I have an assessment that I allow people to go through, which allows them to discover, okay, am I doing okay with my language? Am I using relentlessly positive communication? Am I displaying a relentlessly positive mindset and attitude? Or is it more toxic positivity, which is, ignoring problems and hoping that they go away, deferring disciplinary conversations? That's toxic positivity right there, deferring a discipline conversation or a performance management conversation, because people feel scared when they don't know how they're doing, and they will disconnect, disengage, and the poor performance continues. But if they get the good, healthy feedback, even if it's in the form of disciplinary conversation, people would much rather be on the receiving end of criticism than to feel invisible.
That's powerful.
Mm.
Say that again.
People would much rather be on the receiving end of criticism than feel invisible. Because when you are invisible, you feel unsafe, you feel unseen. It's like, I don't know if I'm doing something right or wrong. I think I might be doing something wrong because I'm getting the vibe, but they aren't telling me. So now I can't trust my leader because my leader says one thing, but they're giving off a different energetic vibe. But leaders in general, we hate to have those conversations. People want to stick their head in the sand and ignore problems and hope that they go away. And then people don't feel seen and they don't feel safe. Feedback makes people feel safe. It's like the guardrails on a really windy road in the mountains. The guardrail isn't going to keep you from flying off the mountain if you're going too fast, but it sends a signal that, hey, you're safe if you bump up against this. It kind of redirects. It's like the bumpers. And without a guardrail, if you've ever been on a mountain trail or a mountain road, I have, a very, very steep, where there was no guardrail and it was a narrow, twisty little road in Ireland, and one wrong turn and you would have been toppling down the mountain. And the whole drive was terrifying. I wanted guardrails. That's what feedback and disciplinary conversations provide.
Yeah, I love that analogy. I've had that drive on the way to Portofino.
Yes,
I was like,
it's the same feeling.
This is very scary. There's like no safety parameters here, but I totally get
Despite
what
the fact
you
that
mean.
those safety parameters really aren't going to necessarily do anything,
Yes.
it creates what we call psychological safety. And good leaders, whether you're leading your family or a huge corporation, understand that psychological safety is one of the most important things that you can provide. And it's a feeling. People feel safe. And then they'll make decisions that reward the business and are good for your goals. If they don't feel that, they won't. So how do you know? You look for the signs like turnover. And you look for yourself. Am I frustrated? Am I feeling defeated? Am I feeling deflated? Do I feel like I'm not accomplishing anything? Am I getting discouraged and sinking into that negative space instead of, okay, I can learn, I can grow. And if you're in that place of defeat and frustration, you're probably using old school command and control leadership, toxic positivity, all these things that aren't good. And instead we can use relentlessly positive.
Love it. You mentioned this assessment, and I'm wondering if you have a way for people to take this assessment and check in about where
Oh,
they're at on the
absolutely.
scale.
Now, I've given it a lot of thought to figure out how can I be of most service and most value to people. So yes, you can take this assessment and you can find it at relentlessly-positive.com/Pamela, my name. And when you take the assessment, you receive a free personalized report with some action items of things that you can do immediately. So if you like the tool of Yet, we've got some other tools that we will give you in your personalized report so you can find out where you fall. And what the cool thing is that even if you fall at the lower end where you're struggling to be relentlessly positive, This is a skill that can be learned. It is not impossible to learn this, and it doesn't require a Herculean lift. What it requires is some small changes in how you communicate both to yourself inwardly and how you communicate outwardly. And I'll give you, no matter where you fall on the scale, some different tools to help you shift your mindset and shift your communication.
In a relentlessly positive mentoring approach.
Absolutely, because I mean, that's what a good mentor does, is a good mentor
Yes.
says, okay, here's an area of opportunity, and here's some ideas on how to address that for your own personal growth. And that's
Yeah,
exactly what that's designed to do.
I love it. And we will link that up in the show notes in case you were
Appreciate
scrambling for a pen or you circle back on this later and you're like, what was that URL? We'll link it up in the show notes to make it super easy for you. Pamela, this is the moment in our conversation where I like to just go a little bit deeper into you as the business owner, as the entrepreneur. I'm really curious, since you've had such a long trajectory as a consultant and trainer and coach and mentor in your industry, what was the boldest thing you ever did that ended up catapulting the success of your work?
Wow, that's such a big question, because I think the boldest thing I ever did was something I chose not to do.
Ooh.
I learned to embrace the power of quitting. It's not my genius, it's not my job. So I stopped doing things that I could do, but were sucking me of energy. I said no to contracts that weren't a good fit. I
Mm.
walked away from my biggest customer because we were no longer a fit. And they had been my biggest customer for a long time. And I terminated the relationship. And it all started because I had the courage to quit a PhD program. That's why I do what I do. I walked away from a PhD program. It was 3 years in. I'd finished all my coursework, did not go any further because I realized it was not in alignment with what I wanted. But I had to quit something, and people said, "Why did you quit? Why did you quit?" Hard to explain why I spent 3 years and did all the coursework, but never finished the actual degree. And because I quit. And it freed me up for possibilities. I would not be doing what I do, because that was the day I realized, well, I am overeducated and underexperienced. What am I going to do? What talents do I have? I took inventory and I found a place where I could use my talents and skills, and it went from there. But if I hadn't quit, I wouldn't be doing it. So I embraced the
Mm.
power of quitting, and that feels really bold to say, yeah, I don't do that anymore. Or no, thank you. Or that's not a fit.
I
Or
love
to
how
stop
sure you are.
mid-project. I was writing a book. I quit. Why? Wasn't working. And it was only making me feel icky. So I quit.
Mm.
And I wrote a different book.
I love it.
Well, thank you. It's fun.
Well, I got one last question for you, and
Fire
that
away.
is, if you look back from the beginning of your career, what's one thing that you wish you would have done sooner? Because besides quitting, learning how to quit well, is there something that you're like, this was a really great investment? Maybe it's time, money, a choice.
I believe the thing that I wish I had done sooner in my career was to spend more of my time, more of my money, more of my resources and energy on things that bring me joy earlier on. Stop thinking someday I'll take the trip. Someday I'll have time to do this hobby that I love. Someday. And I figured it out. Luckily, I figured it out somewhat early, but I sure wish that I had started out understanding that it didn't have to be hustle and grind all the time. And that the rest, meaning like resting your body, resting your mind, is also part of the work. Like, in order for me to do good work, I must lead a rich, full, interesting life. I must travel. I must listen to music. I must do the things, I must dance. I do the things that bring me joy. And that allows me to be more effective in my business life. So I think I'd run towards more joy faster.
I love that. Yeah. And knowing what brings you joy is such an important part of experience positivity.
Well, it's so wild though, because we think we're not supposed to. We think that that's somehow being, oh, I should be working all the time, or that's cheating, or that's lazy. But entrepreneurs must fill their emotional tanks.
Yeah, I agree. So everything we do is driven by emotions. So, Pamela, this has been so powerful. And I love that you're bringing this work into the world. We need more of this. I have several people that I think should be enrolling in your 8-week leadership training program.
Well, send them my way. You know how that works.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm so grateful that our paths have re-intertwined and I get to share you with the Amplify community. As a matter of fact, as you're listening in today, if this has really moved you or illuminated some new behaviors for you that you want to adopt, you had a great aha, give us a little shout out wherever you're listening to this, or pop into our social media, wherever you love to connect, and tell us what you loved about today's episode. Be sure to tag both Pamela and I. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you, Pamela. And thank you for listening in. Thanks for tuning in today, Amplifier. Be sure to join us right now in the Amplify Your Authority community at authorityamplifiers.com, and I'll share my 7 proven tips to be a highly paid expert that stands out in a crowded market. Plus, we're going to keep this conversation going, and I want to hear from you how you're going to amplify your authority and make a greater impact. Before you go, please take a minute to give our show and our guests some love over on your favorite podcasting platform. Subscribe, rate, and review. Leave your full name, and I'll spotlight you and your authority on social media.